For years, media and law enforcement agencies have fueled the myth of a powerful, unified Balkan cartel, a criminal empire, controlling drug trafficking across continents. But does it really exist? Or is it just a sensationalized label for loosely connected crime syndicates? Today, we separate fact from fiction, exposing the truth. The notion of a criminal cartel conjures up images of a highly structured, deeply entrenched, and exceptionally well-organized network of illicit enterprises operating under the firm control of a hierarchy composed of multiple leaders, including influential bosses and an undisputed kingpin at the top. These organizations sustain long-term operations and extend their influence across national, regional, and even global scales, forging intricate alliances with other criminal syndicates worldwide. Law enforcement agencies, investigative bodies, and even the media, Europol among them, have occasionally put forward the concept of a so-called Balkan cartel. But is this a factual reality, or merely an oversimplified and misleading label applied to a loose and fragmented collection of criminal groups operating independently? And why is it important to distinguish between the myth and the truth? Cartels, in their traditional sense, are not merely gangs or crime syndicates. They are vast and highly coordinated enterprises that derive the bulk of their revenue from illicit drug trade. Their entire operational model revolves around the large-scale production, transportation, and distribution of illegal substances. They function by either incorporating smaller criminal organizations into their network or establishing strategic partnerships with external groups willing to assist in the drug trade. However, drug trafficking is not their sole focus. They also engage in financial crimes such as money laundering, ensuring that the vast profits generated from narcotics distribution are efficiently concealed and reintegrated into legitimate economic structures. Historically, some of the most infamous cartels have operated in Latin America. The Medellin cartel, led by the notorious Pablo Escobar, was a dominant force in Colombia's drug trade, controlling vast coca plantations and overseeing an international cocaine smuggling empire. The breakaway Cali cartel, also of Colombian origin, rivaled Medellin in scope and sophistication. In modern times, some of the most powerful cartels are found in Mexico, including the Sinaloa cartel, the Gulf cartel, and the Juarez cartel. These organizations maintain drug trafficking routes that extend deep into the United States, utilizing a network of compartmentalized cells stationed in major cities. These cells either report directly to their superiors in Mexico or operate under the guidance of trusted intermediaries. Their highly structured nature allows them to oversee every facet of the narcotics business, from the initial stages of drug production to international transportation, widespread distribution, and the complex mechanisms of money laundering that keep their profits flowing undetected. If the so-called Balkan cartel truly existed, it would be a formidable criminal alliance spanning multiple countries, bringing together organized crime groups from Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, and Serbia, or at least some of these nations. It would operate under a structured hierarchy, with a dominant figure at the top overseeing its vast operations, which would likely include large-scale drug production, transportation, and distribution, along with sophisticated money laundering schemes. However, despite recurring claims about its existence, there is little credible evidence to suggest that such a unified and centralized cartel operates in the Balkans. If it did, it would undoubtedly be a major force in the global underworld. The reality, however, is far more complex. Criminal groups originating from the former Yugoslavia continue to maintain strong ties, functioning within what some refer to as a Yugosphere of criminal activity. These groups are heavily involved in illicit trade, particularly drug trafficking and smuggling, yet they lack the defining characteristics of a traditional cartel. Unlike Mexico's or Colombia's drug cartels, which exert territorial control and operate through strictly compartmentalized structures, Balkan criminal organizations do not control large swathes of land, nor do they operate with the kind of rigid command and control structure that characterizes cartels. Instead, they are fluid, adaptable, and highly transnational in nature, often working beyond ethnic or national divisions. Ironically, Balkan criminals frequently demonstrate a higher level of cross-border cooperation than the law enforcement agencies attempting to dismantle them. That said, the Balkans are not devoid of mafia-style organizations. Some criminal groups in the region exhibit characteristics typically associated with the mafia, including a well-known name, a distinct hierarchical leadership, territorial control, and an exclusive membership base. These groups, which often revolve around clan-based structures, can be found in Albania and certain other hotspots of organized crime throughout the region. However, their activities are generally concentrated within specific cities or regions, and while they may have international associates, they do not possess the same global reach or operational scope as true cartels. Even though some criminal organizations in the Balkans exhibit select cartel-like features, the idea of a single, overarching Balkan cartel operating under centralized leadership is simply not supported by evidence. In reality, the region is home to multiple competing criminal organizations, many of which are embroiled in violent conflicts with one another. For instance, Montenegro's Kavak and Skaljari clans have been engaged in a brutal and ongoing feud, while rival clans in Albania have also waged bloody battles for supremacy. Rather than forming a single unified cartel, criminals from the Balkans often integrate themselves into broader transnational crime networks, collaborating with drug suppliers in Latin America or distributors in Western Europe. This ability to forge international alliances allows them to remain influential players in the global drug trade without adhering to the strict organizational model of a cartel. Beyond merely debunking the myth, understanding whether a Balkan cartel exists carries significant implications. Drawing on experiences from Latin America and Mexico, the presence of such a powerful cartel would pose a severe threat to regional security, potentially undermining state sovereignty and weakening governments' monopoly on the use of force. The consequences could include rampant violence, the erosion of law enforcement capabilities, and even the infiltration of key state functions. If such an entity emerged, it might seize control over crucial economic sectors, influence political institutions, and dictate operations at key border crossings. The idea of a so-called Balkan cartel, despite the lack of concrete evidence supporting its existence, has taken root over the years. But where does this myth originate, and why does it continue to persist? The roots of this belief can be traced back to the 1980s when young men from what was then Yugoslavia began making a name for themselves in the criminal underworld of various Western European countries. Some of these individuals became enforcers in red light districts, working as bouncers or engaging in human trafficking. Others carved out a space for themselves through protection rackets, extortion schemes, drug trafficking, or even working as contract killers. Their presence in countries such as the Netherlands and Sweden became widely recognized, leading to labels such as Yugomafia and Jugomafian. During and after the violent conflicts that tore apart the former Yugoslavia in the 1990s, criminal groups from the region became increasingly structured and ruthless. The war itself provided many of these individuals with combat experience, access to military-grade weapons, and connections that allowed them to expand their operations. Some even benefited from the parallel economies that developed to circumvent international sanctions imposed during the war years. These factors combined to create an image of Balkan criminals as particularly dangerous and well-armed, fostering a growing sense of fear in the public and among law enforcement agencies. However, while their reputation for brutality increased, their actual influence in the broader European crime scene remained relatively limited. They primarily focused on heroin trafficking, smuggling firearms, and human trafficking, but had yet to reach the level of dominance enjoyed by the more established organized crime groups from Italy, Russia, or Latin America. The myth of the Balkan cartel gained further traction with the rise of Darko Saric, a Serbian citizen of Montenegrin descent who would become notorious in international crime circles. Dubbed the Cocaine King, Saric first drew the attention of law enforcement agencies in the early 2000s when Serbian police received intelligence from their international counterparts linking him to suspected money laundering operations. Over time, his activities expanded, and by 2007, he and other Serbian and Montenegrin criminal organizations had become the focus of Italian authorities. Investigators suspected that these Balkan groups were gradually taking control of the lucrative cocaine trade from the Calabrian 'Ndrangheta Mafia, one of Italy's most powerful criminal syndicates. The defining moment that cemented Saric's reputation came in October 2009 with the high-profile drug bust known as Operation Balkan Warrior. In this joint international law enforcement effort, authorities seized over 2 tons of cocaine aboard a luxury yacht near Montevideo, Uruguay. 2 individuals were arrested, one a Croatian national and the other a Uruguayan. The operation was widely reported in the media as a significant blow to an emerging Balkan cartel, with some commentators even claiming that it had effectively prevented the formalization of such a criminal network. However, the notion that this bust dismantled a singular, structured cartel remains highly questionable, as it is more likely that it disrupted the operations of a specific trafficking network rather than a unified Balkan crime syndicate. To a large extent, the continued use of the term Balkan cartel can be attributed to the sensationalist nature of media reporting. Many journalists and even some law enforcement agencies lack a deep understanding of both the intricacies of organized crime and the complexities of the Balkan region itself. The word cartel is often used in a broad and imprecise manner, becoming a catch-all term for any form of transnational criminal activity. Likewise, the Balkans is frequently depicted as a single, monolithic entity, reinforcing stereotypes about the region as a breeding ground for lawlessness and violence. When combined, these terms create an image of a vast, highly organized, and centrally controlled criminal empire spanning multiple countries, despite the lack of real-world evidence to support such claims. In 2015, law enforcement authorities in the United States identified Nazir Kilmendi as a key figure in the international drug trade and the head of a criminal network operating across the Balkans. His influence spanned multiple countries, particularly Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Serbia, while also extending into Western Europe. Kilmendi's organization was heavily involved in large-scale drug trafficking and money laundering operations, which ultimately led to him being sanctioned by the White House under the U.S. Kingpin Act in 2012. Despite these serious allegations, and his conviction in 2018 for running a narcotics enterprise, Kilmendi was released while awaiting a retrial, leaving his case shrouded in uncertainty. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the globe, Balkan criminals were identified as one of the most significant security threats to Australia in 2015. The primary actors in the Australian underworld were linked to the so-called King's Cross gangsters, a powerful criminal network that controlled the flow of illicit drugs into the country's major ports. One of the key figures in this operation was Montenegrin national Vaso Ulic, who became a central target of law enforcement efforts. His notoriety reached such heights that the media began referring to him as the new Pablo Escobar. In 2019, Ulic admitted before authorities in Montenegro that he had orchestrated an international drug trafficking syndicate, further fueling speculation about the extent of his operations. Ulic was not the only Balkan figure to be given the Escobar label. Another prominent criminal from the region, Albanian national Clement Balili, was also compared to the infamous Colombian drug lord, reinforcing the myth of a unified Balkan cartel. Balili's operations focused on smuggling large quantities of cannabis from Albania into Greece and other European countries. His reach extended into the political sphere, as he held the position of Director of Transport in Saranda, Albania, at the time of his criminal activities. In May 2016, Greek authorities dismantled a major segment of his drug trafficking network, arresting 15 individuals linked to the operation. The subsequent investigation revealed that Balili had played a central role in financing and overseeing the smuggling enterprise. In response to mounting pressure from law enforcement, he went into hiding. It was not until January 2019 that he finally surrendered to the authorities, mirroring the eventual downfall of Darko Saric. Another major player in the Balkan criminal underworld is Edin Gakinen, the notorious leader of the Tito and Dino cartel. His organization has become one of the most influential groups involved in the smuggling of cocaine from South America to the Netherlands, establishing itself as a dominant force in the global drug trade. According to Serbian intelligence services, the Tito and Dino cartel significantly expanded its influence in 2016, filling the power vacuum left by the downfall of Group America following the arrest of one of its key operatives, Zoran Jaksic. This shift in power further highlights the competitive and fragmented nature of organized crime in the Balkans, where rival groups continuously vie for control rather than operating under a single, unified structure. The presence of multiple influential criminal leaders originating from the Balkans demonstrates that while the region is home to a number of powerful organized crime groups, they do not function as part of a singular cartel. In Spain alone, authorities estimate that around 100 different Balkan criminal organizations are currently active, further dispelling the notion of a single, centralized criminal syndicate. Despite this reality, even Europol has continued to use the term Balkan cartel to describe the activities of various organized crime networks operating within and beyond the region. Several large-scale operations have been launched as part of a broader European initiative aimed at targeting what law enforcement agencies refer to as the Balkan cartel. These investigations have uncovered extensive cocaine smuggling routes linking South America, particularly Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama, to European and Asian markets. In addition to drug trafficking, Balkan criminals are also deeply involved in the illegal arms trade. The individuals implicated in these activities typically come from Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, Slovenia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, reinforcing the perception of a widespread criminal presence originating from the region. The myth of a unified Balkan cartel gains further traction each time law enforcement dismantles a large-scale transnational criminal network. One such example is a recent case in Slovenia, where 48 individuals were arrested on charges related to their involvement in a Montenegrin-led criminal syndicate. The arrested individuals were of diverse nationalities, including 20 Slovenian citizens, 11 Serbian nationals, 9 individuals from Bosnia and Herzegovina, 5 from Croatia, 2 from Montenegro, and 1 from North Macedonia. This case exemplifies how Balkan criminal organizations often operate through multi-ethnic networks or form alliances with various criminal factions. However, while these groups may cooperate in drug smuggling, arms trafficking, and other illicit enterprises, they do not function under a single, overarching command structure. Instead, they form fluid, adaptable syndicates that shift based on changing market conditions and law enforcement pressures. Criminal organizations originating from the Western Balkans undeniably maintain extensive networks of cooperation, forming intricate alliances that allow them to expand their reach across multiple continents. Some of these groups specialize in smuggling vast quantities of cocaine from South America into Europe, North America, Africa, and Asia, leveraging well-established logistics routes and trusted contacts in international drug markets. Others, like the notorious Pink Panthers, have gained global notoriety for their meticulously planned, high-profile jewelry heists. Many of these criminal syndicates are composed of individuals from diverse ethnic backgrounds, often hailing from different parts of the former Yugoslavia. Their ability to collaborate so effectively stems from their shared linguistic roots and cultural familiarity, which foster an environment of mutual understanding and trust. A similar dynamic is evident among Albanian-speaking criminal groups, where language and heritage provide an additional layer of cohesion. Beyond intra-Balkan cooperation, many of these groups also established strategic partnerships with criminal organizations operating elsewhere in southeastern Europe, including Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Romania, and Slovenia. Such collaborations enable them to access new smuggling corridors, launder illicit proceeds more effectively, and reinforce their operational resilience. However, their cooperative efforts are not confined to their immediate geographical region. Many Balkan criminals have successfully integrated themselves into criminal enterprises spanning Western Europe, Latin America, and beyond. In some cases, they have even become pivotal figures within transnational organizations that function in a manner resembling cartels. A striking example of this global integration is the case of Campanio Bello, a multinational crime syndicate dismantled in September 2020. This network, primarily composed of Albanian-speaking criminals, played a key role in orchestrating major cocaine shipments from Latin America to Western Europe. Another example that underscores the international scope of Balkan criminal groups is the 2021 arrest of the leader of Colombia's infamous clan del Golfo Cartel. Intelligence reports at the time indicated that his organization had developed connections with multiple criminal networks, including those operating out of the Balkans. These instances demonstrate that while shared ethnicity and language can sometimes facilitate cooperation, they are neither a necessary condition nor a guarantee of alliance. In reality, Balkan groups often find themselves in fierce competition, not only with criminal networks from outside the region but also with rival factions from their own countries. As investigative reports by Inside Crime have highlighted, the modern underworld is increasingly fluid and decentralized. No single criminal group possesses the logistical capability or manpower to manage the entire cocaine supply chain from production in Latin America to distribution on retail markets in Europe or beyond. Instead, these groups must continuously forge, dissolve, and reconfigure alliances based on shifting opportunities, market demands, and law enforcement pressures. This constantly evolving criminal landscape makes it clear that while Balkan groups maintain extensive connections across the globe, their operations lack a centralized structure or overarching leadership. Their influence extends far and wide, their reach touching multiple illicit economies, yet their cooperation is more transactional than hierarchical. Each faction operates with relative autonomy, forming temporary alliances when beneficial but remaining independent entities driven by their own interests. Though these criminal enterprises may share common origins and occasionally collaborate on specific ventures, they do not answer to a single authority or function as parts of a singular, unified organization. Rather than resembling a cartel with a defined leadership structure, the reality is closer to a collection of independent but interconnected criminal networks, each adapting to the rapidly changing dynamics of the global underworld.